We meet at a time when the leaders of city after city and country after country are suddenly eager to attract or create centers of high technology and innovation. Mexico City is not alone. We need to know not merely how to accomplish this magnificent goal, but why and what preconditions will be needed. And thus we need to step temporarily outside the traditional laboratory, university, corporate office, and public agency, each with its limited goals and requirements, and look at the bigger revolutionary picture of change into which Mexico City must be prepared to hurl itself. Today, as the industrial age reaches its limit, humanity lives at the edge of the next astonishing transformation on the planet, a third great wave of change in history, a revolution that dwarfs public imagination. As we all know by now, the economic essence of today's third wave revolution is the shift from production based on muscles to production based on mind. But knowledge, it turns out, is spectacularly different from all the other resources in an economy, which is why today's wealth revolution challenges key assumptions of industrial age economics. At the same time, tomorrow's changes will bring with them immense new opportunities for far-sighted businesses, cities, and governments. In each case, we don't know exactly when they will burst into profitability, but all these things are ongoing within the economy, and they're going to surface before long if they haven't already. What we do know is that leaders in government, business, and civil society will have to anticipate and participate in creating the new legal, social, ethical, environmental, medical, cultural, and political forms of tomorrow. The question facing every organization and city is whether it will ride the revolutionary wealth wave or be left behind. And that is the challenge that faces not just Mexico City, but much of the world. We are heading toward unknown territory. Once again, in human history, we're moving toward the creation of toward the great third wave of change in human history.
In the 1800s in the United States, you had most young people were children of farmers. They worked in the fields. And when somebody proposed that America institute a system of public education for all young people, the parents of the poor parents said, no, we can't allow our kids to go to school. They need to work, otherwise we starve. We don't have enough hands to work in the fields. So they opposed public education. The business community said, we want a system that will create, quote, industrial discipline. Industrial discipline meant you showed up on time. And you did the same work again and again and again and again, just as you did on an assembly line. And what happened was we designed schools that actually resemble the factory. If you look at our schools even today, they simulate factories. Kids have to arrive on time. Why is that? Because in the field, if you come late, it doesn't matter much. Your Uncle Charlie can, fill in for you for a few minutes.
And the bells ring to tell you when the class ends and the next one.
If you, as one person, comes late to the assembly line, you might have 1,000 workers standing by doing nothing, waiting for this function to be done before they can work. So the cost of the workers coming late is extremely expensive. Now what's happening? Now more and more people aren't working like that. They're working at home, or they work at different hours, strange hours, and so forth, and you don't need everybody showing up at exactly the same time. So what we have are schools that were literally designed to provide the workforce for an industrial age economy. And they do that very well, but that's not the kind of economy that we have anymore. And therefore, the entire system is obsolete. And we were waiting for Bill Gates to say something. And about 2 years ago, he finally said the right words. He said, we cannot reform our education system, we must replace it. And he is right, because the system is designed, as I said, to prepare people for yesterday, not for tomorrow. Now, that's an extremely difficult and painful thing to do. You have millions in the U.S., millions of people working in the schools, teachers and other people, and it's very dangerous in terms of they may lose jobs. This doesn't mean the teachers are bad. My sister's a teacher. I don't hate her because she's a teacher, but the system she's working in is a disaster today, and therefore we're going to see battles about education in country after country after country until this system is broken and replaced.
We now have increasing numbers of technologies that arm individuals to do what they previously had to go to an expert or to somebody else to do for them. We used to take a photograph. You wanted to photograph your family, you had to go to a drugstore, you had to buy film, a roll of film. You then shot the pictures, and you went back to the drugstore. They sent it to Kodak up in Rochester, New York, and maybe a week later you had it back. Well, now we have the camera in your hand, and it makes that entire process makes it possible for the user rather than somebody else to make that process, and indeed increasing. I don't know how many of you worry about blood pressure, but you used to have to go to a doctor and say, "Doc, what's my blood pressure?" Now you can buy a blood pressure machine, you have it, it's your own, you do the job that the doctor used to do as far as finding out what your blood pressure was. The question that always came up is, why do I have to study algebra? And the parents always say, because it'll be good for you in the future. Well, that presupposes the parent knows the future, first of all, and second of all, it's not very persuasive. It occurs to me there's a way maybe you could get kids to see a reason for learning algebra. And I've always been thought about the idea, why can't we put together a team of depending on the age, of course, a team of kids with a teacher, and maybe outside citizens who participate, and take them to solve a little local community problem. Traffic jams, or some piece of pollution or something, which just happens to require algebra to solve the problem. And then when you say, why do I need to learn that? You don't have that issue. You say, we've got to solve this problem. It's action learning rather than some abstract. Obsolete is my favorite word in the whole book. It's a word we cooked up to mean obsolete knowledge. Most of the decisions we make in our daily life are based on obsolete knowledge. The most. Including the White House and our own kitchen, okay? And one reason for that is getting more and more true, because as change accelerates, the rate at which knowledge becomes obsolete accelerates. And as a result, much of what we believe will be in another decade or so. We'll all, if we were able to look back on it, we'll say, how do we ever believe that nonsense? It's stupid. And don't be ashamed of being stupid, because Aristotle was stupid, Da Vinci was stupid. If you read the things they actually believed in their time, you can't believe it. You can't believe that they believed it. It was wildly, wildly absurd. The assumption we make is that education takes place in school. In 1976-77, the first PCs appeared in the world. And at that time, if you wanted to buy a PC, nobody had ever heard of a PC before. So you need help. If you're going to use this machine, you need better help than you can get from Radio Shack. What you need is a guru. You need a computer guru. Who is a computer guru? Answer, anybody who bought a machine 1 week before you did. And what happened then was, in a certain way, amazing. Because what happened was, gurus would, one guy would be the guru here, but then this guy would get ahead of him and he would then help him. And you had an enormous transfer of learning among people. And by the end of the century, or now, it must be, 150 million, 200 million Americans who know how to use PCs. They're not necessarily techies, and they're not necessarily full-time geeks, but they know how to use the PC, and I believe that has a powerful impact on the economy and valuable impact on the economy.
The amazing thing is, how did they learn? Almost nobody went to school. This was not education in a classroom. And I tell this story only to say that when we think about education, education of the future, we shouldn't automatically assume that all education takes place in a classroom. It may be that there are completely different ways of moving information, communicating information through the society, let alone online. There was a PC embedded in a stone wall in a village in India without instructions. And the first thing that happened is kids came out and looked at it and began to play with it. And in a matter of days, they had figured out how to do things on it. And they had access to the internet, and they had done all kinds of, for all practical purposes, unimaginable things just by being kids and playing with it. They learned something. So basically the point I'm making is that if we're really going to rethink education, we should rethink it from its ground assumptions up. Why not ask those questions as though we were starting from scratch? Because, in my opinion, we are essentially starting from scratch in a new way of life. I just got a letter from a high school kid in Asia. I won't give you any more definition than that. And he's saying, I read your book. I don't want to be sitting in a classroom where I'm treated like a machine or I'm trained for the industrial age. I want to quit school. He says, I don't intend to stop learning. I want to read, and I want to visit all parts of the world. But I don't want to sit in that classroom anymore.
You recognize individual differences, and it's not just one curriculum fits everybody.
Exactly.
You will sit here from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. and you will study this page of pages 2 to 3 today and 4 and 5 tomorrow.
Absolutely. What we need, we're going into this is another mistake people make about thinking about the future. In my opinion, they think we're moving into a society which is going to be more and more uniform. I think the reverse is true. We're moving from what the sociologists used to call mass society to a demassified, highly diverse society, which is changing at high speed. And that's the world kids are going to live in. And therefore, the idea that everybody gets the same education, everybody starts at the same age, why 5? Maybe this one should start at 3 and that one at 7, who knows? And why should teachers be the only ones who are theoretically providing useful knowledge, and so on. So the whole thing has to be completely rethought.
When I was going to film school, we started studying film on 16mm cameras. And then the faculty decided that by the time we graduate, everything would be on video. So then in the second year, we started using VHS technology, which was the most basic video setup. And then the faculty decided that by the time we graduate, there will be digital cameras. But digital cameras at that time had not come out yet, so we still studied film production on VHS. And when we graduated, the first-year students, the technology was out there, and first-year students were using digital cameras. And they, being in first year, were getting job offers that I was not getting even though I was a graduate. So how do you deal with this dilemma? Like, are we talking about extremely short training courses and just abolishment of these 4-year-long degrees?
I would not be surprised. Put it this way. I think we ought to be shutting down a lot of these schools. And then it occurred to me that maybe what we ought to be doing is opening those schools for the elderly. Look at the world. The kids, we were teaching the kids. Now, in certain ways, kids are teaching us. They've got the technologies that I can't work, and they're doing it's easy for them. The kids who are teaching the parents how this new technology and it's not just the technology, it's the interactions of these technologies, how they work. And that, I think, is a very significant change in human history. That never used to be the case. Kids didn't used to tell parents how to do things. It was the parents who told kids how to do things. And this is historical.
Companies are now outsourcing, not to India and not to China. They're outsourcing to the customer. All you need to do is go to the ATM machine. The ATM machine, you punch in some numbers, you get your money presumably, but what you've done is taken over a job that previously was done by a teller inside a bank. And in fact, we calculate that something like the equivalent of 200,000 teller jobs are what people now make unnecessary by themselves, by we using the machines ourselves and substituting our work unpaid for the work of those tellers. And the same thing is true in many, many other activities.